Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, agents. Mounty Carl back for another Let's Talk on the Division. And as you're well aware, the 1.2 patch dropped today, and you are probably wondering if you haven't already played it for yourself. Is this patch worth playing? And should you come back from all of this time away from the Division? Well, you're about to find out. Let's get going. Alright, agents, so Mounty Carl went around and spent the day with the Mounty squad doing all the various activities that the patch did, except for a couple of them. So let's go over all of the business up front and take care of just the patch notes. So Clear Sky is the Incursion, you must be level 30, and Challenge Mode isn't available yet. We all know this. You can, however, get a 240 just doing the hard mode. We know this because some of us have gotten the 240 gear pieces while we've beaten it. It happens and is possible with the new instances. The great and most fantastic part of this is you never ever need to do the Incursion. You don't ever need to do it. In fact, you don't need to do any of the Incursions ever again if you don't want to. This is, of course, not in the patch notes because Massive doesn't want you to not play the Incursions. But because of what we'll go over in just a minute, if you are over 200 gear score, you don't have to play the Incursions anymore. Now, each time you do the Incursion, you are guaranteed a boss drop of a 214 gear set piece and a 204 weapon. That's each and every time. You will also get a 214 to 240 set piece the first time you do your weekly drop, and it's random. So if you don't get a 240, you will get a 214, and if you don't worry, there's always next week. I'll have a full Incursion guide sometime up tomorrow so you can see how my team did it and how we made it through the Incursion using the same technique twice. We actually ran it twice just to see if the glitch was there, where if somebody else does it, you got a different weekly, and I can report back, you don't. You don't get a weekly twice if somebody else does it. Once, and that's it. So I did find it a great improvement over Falcon Lost, but it does rely heavily on some very cheap mechanics. And it's the one thing that I absolutely hate is cheap mechanics. And this one relies on something I will call the infinite shotgunner. Yeah, it relies pretty much on that alone. That's what makes this one hard. Now, imagine, if you will, how much you hate shotgunners. If you've ever been in the DZ or done Incursions, you hate shotgunners because you know how brutally hard they are and how much they hit you, and the fact that they basically are just sniper rifles. Now, imagine that Massive heard how much you hated them and they made an Incursion based around the one thing that you hated the most. Luckily, they toned down the shotgunners before this, and they don't one-shot you across the screen like level 34 shotgunners do in the DZ currently. The Incursion is definitely the shining moment for the 1.2 patch outside of that one thing. Let's really quickly go over gear pieces because I really want to touch on them. I know that I probably have more to say than what's here, so we'll go ahead and try and cover each of the set pieces in depth over the next week or so, because you're going to be collecting pieces in the DZ through the weeklies and various other activities that you're going to be doing. There are 4 if you didn't know, and each one is pretty weak, I'm going to say. For me, the set pieces were the low point of the patch, and they really were kind of lackluster. Now, I know some of you are going to disagree with that, but really when you look at the perks and the way they're supposed to be used, they don't really measure up to what they want to do. And so they don't really measure up to high-end item perks like Reckless and Savage. Those are superior perks, and I would much rather have those on these set pieces than the ones that are currently on it. So the best perk come from the 2 pieces of Hunter's Faith. So if you're wearing 2 pieces of Hunter's Faith, you get a 20% increase to critical hits. And so the weakest also is the 4 pieces. The 4th perk allows you to get an armor buff that gives you a buff of armor when you shoot somebody, and gives you the armor based on how far away they were when you shot them. However, the armor buff goes away when you get shot once. So it's great for sniping, great for being sniped, but outside of that, it's pretty much garbage. So if you snipe somebody and you have your armor buff and somebody comes up to you with a machine gun, well, you're pretty much done, because the armor is going to go away after the first hit and you're going to get sprayed with 60 bullets right away. So that's pretty much it. If you've played this game, you know full well that the regular enemies can shoot you from the same range as enemy snipers can with the same 100% accuracy. The screen, it's a waste of a 4 set piece. It's good in theory, but against a game where the enemies can shoot you across the screen before you can even see them, it's just not going to work. Now, some very cool perks on the new sets come from the final measure, where you can throw a grenade and defuse an enemy grenade right after. So basically, throwing a grenade with a 4-piece final measure set piece gives you a buff. And when you have that buff, and an enemy throws a grenade at you, basically it diffuses the grenade. Sounds great, but the problem with this game is that the enemies have thousands of grenades. They have an endless supply, and so they just keep throwing them at you, and eventually you're going to run out of grenades, they are not, and it's basically going to be a wash. So it's great in theory. Once again, I don't think it was executed great. What I do think you should be able to do is you should be able to pick it up and put it in your satchel or whatever and use that grenade later. I mean, if you're going to defuse it, allow us to keep it. That way you can go ahead and keep this going. So grenades for enemies will continue to come even when you are well out of grenades to buff yourself with. The Lone Star set gives some great buffs to ammo reserves and damage with underutilized guns. Not to mention never having to reload your guns. By far the most useful talent here in this patch for when you're in the Dark Zone, PvE areas. It's really, love means never having to reload. That's really what it is. This is by far one of the better sets. And finally, the weakest of the 4 set pieces, which is aimed at the DPS set piece, is the Predator's Mark. This set, which is aimed at users who want to be using a DPS class, you're not going to find a huge DPS buff. There's 800 plus to assault rifle damage. It's negligible at best. 700 to pistols? Please. Nobody's pulling out a pistol and shooting anything with it, really. You're using your primary and your secondary, and that's it. This plus 700 to pistols is barely a drop in the bucket. You at least, with one of the other set piece, with the Lone Star, you get 1,000 LMGs and 1,000, and plus 1,000. To shotguns, at least it's primary and secondary. You can use both of those. Pistols, nobody cares about plus 700 to pistols. Maybe there's somebody out there that's listening to this and they do actually care. But in all honesty, I don't, because I rarely use pistols. I use a double barrel shotgun for one as my hand sidearm, so it doesn't really work for me. I'm not getting this set, and pretty much I might play around with it, but it seems to me like it's more of a tanking class set piece, since pistols are something that you would use with a ballistic shield, and many people really use them, rarely use them outside of that. Now, the 4 pieces could be interesting, but would only be applicable to bosses and in PvP. Most NPCs will go down before you can bleed, before that bleed ever takes effect, and before you can ever get 10 shots into somebody. So it's not really gonna, help you with 4 pieces of that set piece. Now, let's cover some of the best things outside of the aforementioned ones we have already mentioned. Now, let's see if I can queue up my first cutting of the rope attempt. Now, this is the first time that cutting of the rope has been implemented into this game. So, and you must be thinking, Mounty Carl, how dare you cut the rope? How dare you go ahead and cut some poor schlups pieces off of the rope and steal them for yourself? Well, as you can see by this clip, we were chasing this rogue, and this rogue had killed several players and then tried to extract the items on a rope. I simply went up to the rope, cut it, and took one for the team. I went rogue immediately, and my thing is no rogue is getting stolen goods out of the DZ. Cutting the rope has not been easy for anybody right now, except for me. I made it look super easy because everybody was chasing this rogue, and then everybody was chasing me, and I died. So not only do you go rogue, but all of those items drop, and you don't have time to pick and choose which items you want from the rope. It's just mayhem. Once you start cutting that rope, people are alerted you're cutting the rope, and you have zero time to just get out of there because you go rogue immediately. Now, I've not tried the daily high value targets, so I'm not going to go ahead and talk about those right now. I'll save them for another day when I've had a chance to go through and just kind of go through the high value targets and stuff like that and all that system. So we're going to move on, and this is really what you came to listen to. Let's talk about sealed caches and scavenging, because scavenging, a lot of people ask the question, did they fix scavenging? Are they fixing scavenging? What are they really doing to scavenging? Now, these two things go hand in hand, and I'll tell you why in just a minute. The sealed caches are great because on any boss in the 201 plus DZ, you have a good chance of getting a mint or a yelled sealed cache, any named enemy, from the 32 zone up to 34. I thought that the 34 guys, they dropped the 240 high-end gear set or mint gear set pieces, and the low ends, they'll drop a 214. But these sealed caches will drop a mystery item every single time, and you don't know what it is until you go in there. And because they don't tell you what it is, there's no level associated with them, so you're guaranteed to get a random roll. It's all RNG, and that's pretty much it. So inside is a guaranteed set item of 214 to 240, no matter what level you are. So if you're willing to work the DZ, you can potentially have full set items without ever doing the incursion. That's why I mentioned before, you never have to do the incursion again. Never. You do not have to do Falcon Lost ever again. You don't have to even do the new Clear Sky one. You can do the DZ and get full set gear pieces of 240. It's going to take you some time, but it's probably going to take you the same amount of time to collect them all from the incursions anyways. So I would say do the DZ. It's the best way to get 240 set pieces now. Now, where does the scavenging come into play? Well, inside of these caches are division tech, and lots of division tech. At minimum, you'll get 2 division tech. And this is all from DZ 200 plus, so it might be different elsewhere. So if your scavenging affects only the drops from the unnamed mobs, it only affects that. We know that. People say that I'm deluded for thinking that. It came from a file drop. I am not wrong in saying this, or else they wouldn't have made the way this works. Trust me on this. It does not affect anything. Zero, zip, zilch, nothing. If you have something you want to say about this, put it down in the comments and I will call you out and tell you how wrong you are. This is not a delusion. This is 100% verified fact by the game files that the only thing scavenging affects is unnamed mob drops. Now that we got that out of the way, Massive did their best to fix this, and they did a great job because it's the one thing that I did today, and I did it for almost all of the day. And what I'm going to do now is I'm probably going to show you a clip of me opening up all of my sealed loot caches that I got from today, and there are tons of them. And so the unnamed mobs drop in the 200 plus DZ, they drop purple loot caches. Now, the loot inside is garbage. It's a 165 purple, and they contain lots of division techs, which is the real prize. You want the division tech. That's what you really want. Now, why am I saying this? Well, scavenging increases the drop rate of these loot caches, of these sealed loot caches. 2 out of every 4 loot caches, or out of every drops I was getting, out of every purple drops I was getting, 2 of them were loot caches. I was filling up my bag faster than I could extract this stuff. And I mean, there was a lot. And I have 114% scavenging, and it was just insane how much they were dropping. Somebody in my group also had 40 scavenging, 40% scavenging. He was wondering why me and one of our other friends was getting so many drops for these sealed caches, and he wanted in on it. And he said, "What is your scavenging at?" And I said 114%. The other guy had like 160, and we were just knocking them out of the park. And it affects the drop rates of how much these drop because the scavenging gets you better stuff. So these loot caches are the top tier, better stuff of the superior bracket. So if you have scavenging, put it on, go in there and get your stuff. I went from 0 division tech, now I have 250 division tech. 3 hours worth of work in the dark zone, going through, just collecting, killing named bosses and extracting this stuff. It's the best part is that, of the day. And the best part is that your stash is in your checkpoint, so if you get tired or it fills up, you just go to the checkpoint. Great addition. Massive, by the way. Let me just tell you, this was a great addition. Just go into the loot cache and to the checkpoint, grab your stash, check it out. There you go. And that's really what it is. So in a way, they fixed scavenging the best way they knew how, and the best way that the developer could do it without actually having to go in and fully recode how scavenging works. Because as the file dump says, some of it is hard-coded. Like what the bosses drop, that's all hard-coded. It's not scavenging, and there's no way for scavenging to affect that stuff. So one last awesome thing, DZ supply drops. the supply drops that drop in the DZ. They have one guaranteed 240 item. Now, sure, some of them are Path of the Nomad gear, which is super garbage. Like, unless you're going for scavenging and you want to just hit up that. But it's still a 240 mint. I've gotten several, and each one of them has always given a minimum of 240 gear pieces in the 200 plus DZ, plus you get the drop off the boss, which can be anything from a 204 gold up in the 34 range to a mint loot cache, which the mint loot caches are great because they give 214 to 240 gear, and it's awesome. Now, the things that were rubbish and still need work, and I want to wrap this up quickly, so I'll just name a few and let it go at that, and then we'll do another video on Let's Talk on anything you guys want to talk about. If you found anything, leave your comment down below. If you found anything you didn't like, and you know, all that stuff. So, loot boxes in the DC were untouched. Now, Dark Zone boxes are nothing more than crafting material containers at this point, so they touched none of that stuff. The Dark Zone boxes are a waste of Dark Zone key. It still has a 163 or lower item plus a performance modification or something like that. It's garbage. Don't even worry about opening them up until they fix them. The regular ones have just the same purples in them. There's still blues. There's still greens in most of them. They need to fix this stuff because nobody wants to open these boxes anymore because all the rest of the loot is just superior. Let's talk about the exotic weapons they put in really quickly. The Historium, which is available in the boo. Go upstairs, buy it from the guy who has Phoenix credits, and you can buy it, but it's not worth it. Once again, another letdown, supremely let down, and unless it's your only item and you've never had an M1A before, go ahead and buy it, but it's a waste of Phoenix credits at 800 Phoenix credits plus. It's just a classic M1A with only 3 mod slots, so you're not going to get a full first wave M1A out of this. It's not going to have 5 mod slots. You're not going to have a superior sniper rifle with it. It's garbage. Don't even worry about it. Go look for a first wave M1A out there. There's lots of them. Next, the Hungry Hog. I'm going to do a full review on some of these. I got a Hungry Hog drop, and sure, the DPS on mine was a little bit more than some of the other people that got them in my group. It's supremely, what is that word? That's not even a word. Anyways, it's super underpowered. Not at all tempted to keep this item. It looks just like the LMG version of the Liberator and does little to create confidence that these name weapons would be better than the others. They are still garbage. All of the name weapons that they put in, still garbage. Why are you doing this, Massive? We've asked you to, if it's a named weapon and you want us to use it, make it a better weapon. Make it one of the best weapons you can get. Sure, people like a named weapon. It's just not going to happen. Anyways, moving on. Next named weapon, Centurion, which you can get from the advanced weapons vendor at the back of the VOO. Not worth it at all. 700,000 credits, lackluster stats, and perks. You get it all. It's not worth it. It's a handgun. Now, the bonus that they hype with performance mods, barely recognizable. Just do what you used to do with these. Decrypt them, decraft them. That's all. There are a few rare gems out there. Like I saw one like 12% increase to damage for sticky bombs or something like that, which would be good. But it's just, it is what it is. It's not, you know, they're still far from being useful at all. Keep at it, Massive. You're working on it. We recognize that you're trying your hardest to appease everybody. So I think that covers pretty much all of the best and the worst things that I didn't like about 1.2. And the best thing about 1.2 is that Massive did a great job of giving a different path to every player on how they could gear up. Basically a smorgasbord of what, if you want to be a PvE player, you have a straight line of being a PvE player. You can go out, you can do your PvE, you get your 240 set pieces and stuff like that. Good for you. Go to the Incursion, get your set pieces, PvE. Go to the Dark Zone, 240 set pieces, PvE. You know, just do it. It's great. Massive did a really great job of listening to the community. Kudos to Massive for really banging this one out and listening to the community and really trying to put everything that the community, you know, kind of commented in. I mean, they even fixed, tentatively, they fixed the mobile cover. So you can't throw it and pass through walls anymore. We'll figure that out. I'm sure that there's a way to do it. We'll figure it out. Don't worry. If they did a half-ass glitch for that, people will figure this out. Don't worry. They're coming. The glitches are coming. I can almost guarantee that. But the fact of the matter is, you have a choice on how to get your favorite gear, and it all varies in difficulty. However, my opinion is that the 200 plus DZ is by far the fastest way to get the gear you want. And I am happy to, if I'm, rolling around with the Mountie squad and somebody who's lesser than 200 wants to come in and join up with us, you will get stomped quite a bit and you'll lose a lot of experience, but you will get a lot of really good loot and stuff like that. So the offer's out there. Just message me. If I don't get back to you, it's because there's no room or somebody's already taken the spot. Doesn't matter. Maybe I'll just create a day where I play with fans and that's it. But we'll work it out. I already got a couple people on my list of people that want to play with me, and they're already at the top of the list, so there you go. Now, trust me, I am now flush with 240s, and although most of them are terrible rolls, they're still 240s, and the chance to get more is always on the horizon in the DZ. So go the DZ, get your 240 gear if you're 200 plus. If not, get there. Watch my video on how to get to 200 plus. There you go. Anyways, so that's my time. Big thanks for hanging out with Mountie Carl for this long stretch of time. I know we went over. We're hitting the 20-minute mark. If you enjoyed this, let's talk. Go ahead and drop a like and consider subscribing if you haven't. I know that I have missed some items in this patch notes, so leave a comment down below and on what you liked and you didn't like, and we'll talk about it in the next Let's Talk. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time on The Division Let's Talk. Agent out.